students. My name is Niyati Seth and thanks for watching Edupedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the 7th section of the chapter Morphology of Angiosperms, that is flowering plants. My today topic of presentation is Corolla, okay, and Perianth. So what is Corolla? Okay, when you look at a flowering plant, what's the first thing you notice? Is it a stem, leaf, or a flower? On most flowering plants, the most noticeable feature is a brightly colored petals of the flower. This is petal of the flower, okay? It catches the attention, okay? The petals of flowers are often arranged in a circle around the center of a flower, as you can see. Okay, that this is the center of the flower, and the petals of the flower, they are often arranged in the circle around the center of a flower, and this collective unit of petal is known as corolla. Okay, so many petals, they form corolla. In addition to the corolla, most flowers have three other circles of a structure that make up a complete flower. And what are those? On outside of the corolla, most flowers have sepals. As you can see, these are sepals. They are green leafy like in nature, so they are considered as sepals that enclose the petal before the flower opens. The first circle of the structure on inside of the corolla is made up of male reproductive organ of the flower, including many stamen. The circle at the center of a flower consists of female reproductive. As you can see that this is the female reproductive unit of a complete monoecious flower, and these four are your male reproductive units of a monoecious flower. Okay, so you can say that the circle at the center of a flower consists of a female reproductive organ, which are collectively referred as pistil. Okay, this is a stigma, this is a style, and this is ovary. So these three, they form pistil. Pistil is the female reproductive organ of a monoecious flower. Okay, so you can say that corolla, it is the second hole inner to the calyx. Okay, this is your petal. Okay, and collective form is known as corolla. Corolla are of two types. One is free and another is fused. Okay, as you can see that rose is an example of polypetalous. That means so many petals. Poly means many and petalous are petals. Okay, so it is seen in rose. Now comes fused. That means all petals are fused. Here petals were free from each other, whereas in this form petals are fused. So it is called as Gamopetalous. Okay, that means fused petals, and it is seen in Dhatura. Okay, so polypetalous example is your rose and Gamopetalous example is Dhatura. Okay, in Dhatura all petals are in the fused state, whereas in polypetalous state all petals are free from each other. Okay, so corolla are of two types: polypetalous, that is free state of petals, and Gamopetalous, in which the petals are in the fused form, which is seen in Dhatura. Okay, now what are the functions of corolla? Have you ever thought of? So overall, the main function of the corolla is to assist in reproductive process of the plant. The petals of the corolla, they are designed to aid in pollination and therefore increases the chances of successful reproduction of the flower. Some plants, they are pollinated when wind picks up their pollen and transfers it to another flower of the same species. For plants that use wind pollination, the corolla assists this process by having small petals. The small petals, they do not block the wind, and thus it make it possible for wind to move over the anther, which makes the pollen grain and thus transfer it to another flower. Okay, So you can say that color and the texture of the petals of the corolla, they also play an important role in pollination. Okay, in order to attract certain animal species, the flowers have developed petals with the colors specifically pleasing to those animals. Okay, so your first function is to attract bright color that attracts insects and birds, and sweet scent that attracts insects for the pollination. Second function of corolla is to protect essential organ stamen and carpel in bud condition. Okay, and third function is that tubular corolla, it stores nectar also to attract agents of pollination. Okay, now comes our perianth. What is perianth, students? It is present in most flowers. Okay, calyx is green and corolla is brightly colored. Okay, and calyx and corolla together makes perianth of the flower. Okay, so you can say that calyx, that is sepal, and corolla, that is petals. So sepal plus petal, or calyx or corolla, it together makes perianth. Okay, so calyx and corolla, they are also morphologically similar in some plants, in some flowers. Okay, together they are known as perianth. Okay, this is perianth. Okay, what is this? This is tepal. Tepal is one of the outer part of a flower when these parts cannot easily be divided into two parts. Okay, two kinds, that is sepals and petals. This may be because the part of the perianth, they are undifferentiated. Okay, now comes tepal. Tepal are of two types. First is free, as you can see that all tepals are free, in free state, hence it is called as polyphylous. Okay, it is seen in this flower. Now comes fused, that means all tepals are in the fused state, hence it is called as Gamopetalous. Okay, see, this is green in color. This is cephaloid perianth. Okay, this is cephaloid perianth, and this is colored, hence it is petaloid perianth. Okay, it performs photosynthesis. Which one? Cephaloid perianth, because sepals are a leaf-like structure and they are green in nature, hence they perform photosynthesis. And if this perianth is cephaloid in nature, hence it also performs photosynthesis. Petaloid perianth, hence it is petalous in nature, so it attracts insects for pollination because it is colored in nature. Okay, so this is the typical representation of a flower, in which this is the pistil, ovary, style, and stigma, hence all three they make pistil. Okay, that is your female reproductive part of a monoecious plant or flower. This is your anther and this is your filament, and they both together make stamen, that is endoecium, that is male reproductive part. Okay, this is petal, these are sepals, this is receptacle. Okay, so calyx and corolla, it forms perianth. All petals, these are petals. Okay, these are sepals, and all the sepals they make, or collective form, is known as calyx. Okay, and calyx plus corolla is equals to perianth. This is the diagram of a pistil. This is a stigma, as I told you. This is a style, this is ovary, this is ovule. With passage of time, ovule makes seed and ovary makes fruit. Okay, sepals. Sepals, they are outermost flower structure that encloses the other floral parts in the bud. Okay, so this is the first whorl. Okay, and petal, they are second whorl. Okay, of a plant. Calyx. Calyx is a collective term for all the sepals in the flower. Okay, you have likely seen a flower before, whether as a part of a bouquet or growing wild in a field. But have you ever looked really close at a flower? If you did, you would see that a flower is made up of many parts, one of them being a sepal. Okay, sepals, you can say that they are modified leaves that perform the outer wall of a flower. They are typically green but can be other colors also, because exceptions are always there. Okay, flowers have different number of sepals depending on the species. Collectively, the sepals are referred to as calyx of the flower. With this flower, you can see that sepals are green. Okay, Sepals, they are attached directly to the top of the stem of a flowering plant. As you can see that this is the stem, and these are the sepals that are attached directly to the top of the stem of a flowering plant. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some sepals, they are long, they are thin, while others are short and thick. Some sepals, they are individualized, while others are fused together to make a cup formation around the petal of the flower. Okay, now what if one asks you about the function of a flower sepals? So when a plant is ready to produce a flower, the first step is the formation of sepals. Sepals grow out from the top of the stem. The sepals, they form a tightly closed area, as you can see, okay, often referred to as bud, very compactly arranged. Inside the bud, a flower forms. This includes the petal of the flower as well as reproductive parts such as the stamen and pistil. During this time of formation, the sepals, they form a protective enclosure for the flower and keep it from drying out. So this is the main function of a sepals, whose collective form is known as calyx. Okay. Now tepals, both sepals and petals, they are identical, then that is known as tepals. Okay. See, these are your petals. This is your petal and this is your petal. But this and this is your sepals. So when sepals and petals, they both are identical, then that is known as tepals. Okay. Petals plus sepals is known as tepals. Only when sepals and petals, they look alike, inner wall is petal and outer wall is sepal. So what is perianth? Perianth is a petal plus sepal combined. May or may not be identical. This is the difference between perianth and tepals. Okay. Petal, flowers showpiece positioned between sepal and inner flower plant. This is corolla. Okay. Collective term of all the petals inside the flower. Okay. So now come to the flower nomenclature. Stamen is the male reproductive part of a flower. Androecium, whose collective term for all the male parts present in the flower, meaning house of men. Anther is a pollen bearing portion of the stem, and filament is the stalk of the stamen bearing the anther. As you can see that this is the filament, this is anther, okay, and they together form a stamen, that is androecium, that is male reproductive part of a plant. Please see that this is bilobed anther and this is filament, and it together forms a stamen. Okay, it together forms a stamen. Function of the stamen, you can say that the main function of the stamen is to produce the pollen grains which house male gametes or sex cells necessary for reproduction. The anther is located within the stamen where these gametes are created. Okay, and pollen grains, they vary in size, shape and surface structure based on type of the flower that produces them. Most pollen grains, they are round, as you can see. Okay, and it could be oblong also. Okay, it could be oblong also, and they are very tiny. They range from between 15 to 200 micrometers. If you are unfamiliar with micrometers, 1000 or 10,000 micrometer is equals to 1 centimeter. Okay, now you can imagine that how tiny they are. This means that pollen grains which are only between 15 to 200 micrometer, they are extremely small, and most are not visible without the use of microscope. Despite the difference in size and shape, all pollen grains, they have one structure in common. They all have outer shells that help protect the gamete inside from element outside the pollen grain. And now come to the filament. This is your filament. Although the filament may be thought of just a simple stalk, it actually has a very important function. And what is that? The filament is responsible for getting the pollen bearing anther as close to the top of a pistil as possible, because this is the location where pollen will be transferred to the female reproductive organ. The filaments, as I told you, they are normally very tall. They are many of them designed in a circle around a pistil to increase the likelihood of pollen transfer in monoecious plant. let's assume if a filament was too short or too far away from the pistil, the transfer of the pollen would be more difficult then and could result in the decreased state of successful reproduction. Okay, now come to the another flower nomenclature, and that is pistil. Okay, now what is pistil? Pistil is a female reproductive part of a plant. Okay, Gynoecium, collective form of all reproductive female reproductive parts, meaning house of women. Okay, stigma, style, ovary and ovules, they are the four parts. Okay, what if you were hired by a plant to advertise its readiness to reproduce? Since giving it an online dating profile would not really be an option, you might try a more good school tactic like dressing it up to make it look nice. But in the plant world, that dressing already exists. It's called flower, and it houses important reproductive parts of a plant, including pistil. Okay, the pistil is the female part of a flower, and it's actually made up of several parts. Usually they are arranged in the shape of a bottle. The stigma, as I've shown you the diagram, is a very flat and sticky top of a flower. The stalk that extends below the stigma is called as style. Okay, style is a slender column of tissue that arises from the top of the ovary. Now finally at the bottom is the ovary, the swollen base where the style attaches. The ovary contains the ovules, which are immature seeds waiting to be fertilized. Okay, and then comes receptacle. It is a stem tip that bear all flower parts, which I have shown you in the diagram. Okay, so this is pistil, this is the tip of the flower, which is called as stigma. This is a style, and this is ovary, the bottom part. Okay, and this is anther, and these are the filaments of an anther. Okay, so this is your monoecious plant in which female as well as male reproductive parts are present. Okay, so this is your pistil, this is female flower part. Okay, this is ovary, which develops into fruit, and ovules develop into seeds. They are present inside the ovary. Okay, so this is your style, long tube. This is your stigma, which is very sticky in nature. Hence these three, they form pistil, which is known as female flower parts. So let's see stamen and pistil once again. This is your anther, this is your filament. Okay, this is your ovary, this is your style, this is the stigmas. Hence they make stamen and pistil. Hence it is your monoecious plant. So this was all about the part of a flower. Now in my next section of the presentation we'll be discussing about the estivation. Okay, so till then stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia word videos. Thank you.